The ceramic plate burst against the cabinet and rained shards across the floor. And I dropped to my knees by instinct, wiping sauce from the tile while my daughter-in-law hovered above me like a warden. "Since you're living here for free, you'll pay rent by working as my maid," she said, voice silk over razors. Then I heard the solid pace of military boots crossing the hardwood my son David's homecoming stride. The one that could end months of perfectly rehearsed lies. Before I tell you what he heard, I need to tell you how a woman like me ended up here at all. Scrubbing a stranger's temper off my knees at 6:15 p.m. I'm Margaret Foster, 63, the kind of person who keeps warranties in labeled envelopes and believes a clean ledger can tame a messy world. I thought I had life mostly solved: a paid-off house in suburban Atlanta, a pension that covered groceries and modest travel, a body that creaked but obeyed. Then, during a routine mammogram at 10:20, Dr. Williams set a folder on the counter and folded his hands. "The tumor is aggressive but treatable with immediate surgery," he said, steady as a metronome. "However, your insurance has significant gaps. We're looking at about $87,000 out of pocket. My life savings sat around $28,000. Arithmetic is ruthless. Grief for my late husband had taught me to breathe through bad news. But when I left the clinic that day, even air felt expensive. David called from Fort Bragg at 8:40 p.m. Voice crisp with the kind of decisiveness the Army drills into the bones. "Mom, we're selling the house. Use the money for surgery and recovery. Jennifer and I already talked. You're moving in with us until you're back on your feet." I protested in the small, ceremonial ways mothers do, and he cut through them gently. "After losing Dad, I won't risk you going through this alone." Jennifer joined the call, bright and effusive. "We're so excited to have you. Mom Foster. Perfect timing." In shock, gratitude felt like a warm coat I didn't remember buying. The house sold in 3 weeks. After the operation, the chemo, and all those exhausting appointments at 2:00 p.m. and 9:30 a.m. I had $19,000 left, enough to begin again once my stamina returned. Not enough to sprint. David and Jennifer had rented a snug townhouse, but he wanted space for my recovery. So he laid out a plan during a call at 7:10 p.m. Patient and proud, he'd take my remaining money as a down payment and title the new home in my name for tax reasons and asset protection. "This way, the house is yours, Mom," he said. "We all live there as family, and when you're fully recovered, if you want your own place, we can sell and split fairly." Jennifer smiled when I arrived, all warmth and promise. "Honestly, we hope you'll want to stay." The first 6 weeks were springtime. Jennifer drove me to the oncologist at 10 Sura. String bag of clementines on the passenger seat. She set soup by my bedside at 6:00 p.m. Adjusted pillows, cued old movies that made us laugh. David coordinated contractors who turned the basement into a soft-lit sanctuary with a walk-in shower and a kitchenette. I told everyone at church Jennifer was an angel, and I meant it. But the week before David deployed to Germany for 6 months, the temperature changed. On the driveway at 7:45 a.m., she hugged him just long enough to look perfect for the neighbors. As his car vanished, she lifted her eyes to the basement window where I stood and, for a heartbeat, let me see something raw and cold. Then the smile snapped back in place. I told myself I was tired and uncharitable. 2 days later, while I was halfway into a dress, she opened my door without knocking. "Oh, sorry," she said, not retreating. "Mail?" I cinched my robe. "Please knock next time." She nodded. "Of course. Though this is one household, privacy is important for house guests." I heard the word she wanted me to hear. guest, not owner. The next morning, a note slithered under my door like a quiet snake. Morning noise carries. Please keep activities before 9 a.m. to an absolute minimum. Thanks. Jay, I didn't know I was loud. My television volume barely kissed 12. The kettle rarely whistled, so I made coffee like a thief and read with a blanket over my shoulders. That evening, at 6:30 p.m., she arrived with a tuna casserole and the aroma of chopped onion, which I'd explained triggered my reflux. "Oh, right," she said, tapping her forehead. "Forgot. Guess you'll figure out dinner on your own." The words were light. The dismissal wasn't. Little slights begged to be forgiven, but they didn't stop. She accidentally scheduled girls' nights every Thursday, and I was invited to enjoy my own cozy space downstairs. She told a friend through the vents that I suffered personality changes after the surgery. She began narrating me as a problem-dependent, demanding, fragile. I have lived long enough to recognize weather patterns in people. What began as drizzle promised a storm. On a quiet Tuesday at 3:50 p.m., I bought a little spiral notebook and started writing in ink that didn't smudge dates, times, exact sentences. People argue with feelings. They trip over facts. A week later, she knocked once and pushed in, face composed into managerial care. "Good morning, Mom Foster," she said. The pet name cooled to room temperature. She handed me a printed page titled Household Contribution Expectations. Deep clean bathrooms weekly, mop kitchen floors daily, all household laundry, including delicates, complete grocery shopping and meal preparation, windows interior and exterior. I read it twice. "Jennifer, some of this may still be too strenuous." She tilted her head. "You've been cleared for normal activity for over 2 months. I thought you'd appreciate a chance to contribute meaningfully. David works incredibly hard to support this household. I manage everything else." I heard the moral framing good families pull their weight. I also heard the trap fail, and you are selfish, succeed, and it becomes your permanent job. I took the list and said I'd do what I could. Then, at 4:20 p.m., while scrubbing her bathtub on aching knees, I called my old pastor. "I need guidance," I said, "for older adults in difficult family situations." Pastor Williams listened, then named things I hadn't let myself say aloud: adult protective services, legal aid, temporary housing if needed. The call didn't solve anything. It did something better. It reminded me I had options. That evening, I slid the contribution list into a plastic sheet protector and tucked it behind my notebook. A game was starting, one I hadn't chosen, and I intended to keep score. 3 weeks into Jennifer's new schedule of contributions, I found the first real crack in her performance. While changing sheets in her bedroom, one of the duties she assigned me, I noticed a book on the nightstand. A folded paper peeked from the pages. I opened it with the guilty hands of someone searching for survival and read words that turned my stomach cold. The draft of an email, neatly composed, addressed to a geriatric specialist named Dr. Patricia Hendress. The subject line, urgent consultation concerning behavioral changes. The body detailed claims of my paranoia, confusion, and accusations against my daughter-in-law. All lies, dressed in clinical language. Every sentence carried the ring of preparation, not frustration. Jennifer wasn't improvising cruelty. She was drafting a case to declare me incompetent. My hands shook as I photographed the letter with my phone. That night, I lay in my basement suite, heart pounding, and considered the implications. If she could convince a doctor, if she could spin this to David while he was half a world away, I could be stripped of decisions, dignity, maybe even freedom. I wasn't just battling a petty daughter-in-law. I was in a quiet war for my autonomy. So I recorded every call through the vents, every slip of venom when she thought I couldn't hear. The night she spoke on the phone at 8:15 p.m. with the same Dr. Hendris, requesting documentation that my mother-in-law can't make sound decisions. I caught her voice clearly enough that no denial would erase it. This time, I didn't keep the evidence locked away. I emailed the recording to David's personal account. Subject line, urgent listen. 2 days later, David called for our weekly video chat. Jennifer appeared beside me, smiling with that polished warmth she wore like perfume. "There are my favorite ladies," David said, though his tone carried a weight I recognized from his deployments. Careful, deliberate. Jennifer jumped in. "Though your mom seemed confused yesterday about her appointment schedule," she added sweetly. "Didn't you?" "Mom Foster." I opened my mouth, but David cut across her. "Actually, Mom sent me something interesting. An audio recording." The room froze. Jennifer's breath faltered. She tried to pivot, voice quickening. I was only exploring options to help her episodes. "What episodes?" David demanded. "Be specific." The silence was a kind of thunder. She fumbled, improvising, but the mask had slipped. For the first time, Jennifer realized she was being measured by someone who wasn't blinded by her performance. The call ended with David's voice sharp as a command. "Jennifer, stop talking!" She turned to me after the screen went black. Fury uncloaked. "You recorded my private conversation. You violated my privacy." I met her glare evenly. "You plan to have me declared incompetent with lies. That call proves it. It proves you're paranoid." She spat. "No," I said, calm for the first time in weeks. "It proves you're dangerous." I saw then that our game had shifted. She would no longer chip away slowly. She would come for me head on. The next morning at 10:00, she placed a printed confirmation on my table. "Your appointment with Dr. Hendris, Monday, 2:00. My voice stayed steady. "I don't need to see a psychiatrist." Her eyes glittered. "I think you do. Secretly recording conversations, making accusations, it's evidence of decline. As your primary caregiver while David's deployed, I can advocate for necessary intervention. You can't force me." Her smile sharpened. "Actually, I can, especially when someone shows declining judgment." She thought she had power of attorney simply by proximity. I looked her dead in the eye. "Fine. Call David. Tell him I'm refusing psychiatric care. Let's see what he says." For the first time, her confidence wavered. "I don't think that's necessary." "I do," I said. The bluff had been called. When she left for yoga at 2:00 p.m., I made my own calls. First to Adult Protective Services. The caseworker didn't hesitate, "Ma'am. What you're describing is elder abuse. We can open an investigation immediately." Then to David. He listened, then spoke slowly, as if loading every syllable with weight. "Mom, Jennifer has no legal authority over you. She cannot force medical treatment. You have the absolute right to refuse. Send me every note, every recording, every photograph. I'm requesting emergency leave. I'll be home Wednesday afternoon. Until then, don't let her isolate you." Relief swelled in me, but fear followed. Jennifer would not accept her timeline collapsing. Her tactics became crueler. At 9:00 Saturday, she dumped my folded clothes into garbage bags, claiming they smelled musty. Sunday night, she salted dinner until it was inedible, then feigned concern that I wasn't eating. Every jab was another stroke in the portrait of a declining mind. But Monday morning, she slipped up fatally. Through the vents, Her voice carried, laughing on the phone. The crazy old bat is finally starting to crack. By Thursday, David will be begging me to put her in a nursing home. Problem solved. My hand trembled, but I hit record. This was the proof that stripped away any remaining pretense. When she left for an overnight trip to her mother's at 11:30 Tuesday, I packed my essentials documentation, recordings, photographs into a tote. Then I called Pastor Williams. "I need a safe place tonight. The guest house is open," he said. For the first time in months, I slept in a bed without fear. But at 6:03 a.m. the next morning, my phone rang. Jennifer's voice. Perfectly calibrated panic. "Margaret, where are you? You're not home? Are you confused about where you live?" I answered evenly. "I'm safe. Jennifer, at church." She pushed hard. "This is concerning behavior. You could have had an emergency, gotten lost." I ended the call. By 8:00 a.m., David texted, "Jennifer says you disappeared and left a note." "Are you okay?" I wrote back. "Completely fine. No note. At church guest house. New recordings prove everything." Her lies were sprinting ahead, but her credibility was collapsing behind her. By 10:30 a.m., police officers knocked at the guest house. "Ma'am, we received a missing person report. Elderly woman, possible dementia." I smiled grimly. "Officers, I'm not missing, and I'm not impaired. I left voluntarily due to ongoing harassment from my daughter-in-law." They listened, nodding, exchanging glances. "What you're describing may constitute elder abuse," one said gently. "Would you like to file a report?" "Not yet," I told them. "My son is returning this afternoon. He'll handle it." But their presence proved what I already knew. Jennifer had overplayed her hand. She thought she could frighten me into submission. Instead, she summoned witnesses to her collapse. By 3:00 p.m. Wednesday, David's plane was on the ground. At 3:45 p.m., we stood side by side at the front porch of the house that was legally mine, his hand steady on my shoulder. "Ready for this, Mom?" he asked. My voice didn't tremble. "I've been ready for months." Jennifer emerged from the kitchen the moment we stepped inside. Her face already rehearsed for the role of concerned wife. "Margaret, thank God you're safe. I was so worried when you vanished like that," she said. Her tone pitched perfectly between relief and exasperation. David didn't let her finish. "Stop," he said quietly, and that single word cut sharper than a shout. She froze for a fraction, then tried again. "David, I didn't know what to do. Your mom," I said, "stop talking." The authority in his voice made even me sit straighter. Something shifted in the room. Jennifer realized this wasn't the husband she could charm and redirect. This was the soldier, the son, and the man who'd heard too much already. He gestured to the living room. "Sit down. We're having a conversation." We sat, the air so heavy it felt physical. David pulled out his phone, scrolled, and pressed play. Jennifer's own voice spilled into the room, clear and damning, asking Dr. Hendress for professional documentation that I couldn't make sound decisions. Her face blanched, but recovered quickly. "David, I was only trying to get help for your mother. She's been..." He stopped the recording and played another. This time, she was laughing, calling me a crazy old bat, and boasting that by Thursday, I'd be institutionalized. Jennifer's expression cracked for real. That was taken out of context. She tried weakly. David leaned forward, calm and immovable. "These recordings span weeks. They document a campaign." Jennifer. a deliberate campaign to build a false case against my mother. Her defenses came rapid now, desperation bleeding through. You don't understand what it's been like living with her. She gets confused, forgets things. I fact-checked every story you told me, David said, producing a thick folder from his bag. I spoke with her doctor, grocery clerks, even Uber drivers. Everyone described her as sharp, polite, coherent. Every incident you reported was disproven? Jennifer stared at the folder as if it were a weapon. You're taking her word over mine. I'm your wife. David's voice dropped, soft but devastating. You were my wife. Past tense. Her face fell. She scrambled, reaching for tears. David, please, don't do this. You're choosing her over me. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my concern, he said. You have 2 hours to pack your personal belongings and leave this house permanently. She tried one last card. This is my marital home. I have rights to half of it. David didn't raise his voice. No. This house was bought with my mother's money before we were even engaged, and the deed is in her name. It was never marital property. You've been a guest here. That invitation is revoked. Her tears dried instantly. This is all her fault, she hissed, pointing at me with open hatred. She's manipulative and jealous because you chose me. David shook his head. Mom didn't turn me against you. You did that yourself. He flipped open the folder again, detailing how he'd moved most of their joint savings into a separate account before deployment, suspecting something was wrong. Jennifer's eyes widened. You planned this? You've been planning to leave me? No, David said simply. I was hoping I was wrong. I was hoping I'd come home to find my mother cared for. Instead, I found 6 months of psychological torture. At 6:00 p.m., Jennifer slammed the trunk of her car, her 2 hours nearly up. She didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. She drove away as if the house had never mattered, though her eyes had burned holes through me moments before. As the taillights vanished, the air in the house changed. For the first time in months, I felt it exhale. It's over, David said, but I knew better. Jennifer wasn't finished yet, not with the divorce looming, not with her hunger for control. What she hadn't accounted for was that I wasn't the same frightened woman who'd once whispered in a basement notebook. I had evidence. A son who believed me, and a resilience she had failed to break. The divorce process stretched over 14 months. Jennifer fought like a cornered animal, claiming spousal support, half the furniture, even part ownership of my personal belongings. Her lawyer presented evidence of her caregiving services, insisting she'd sacrificed her own well-being for mine. But David's attorney dismantled every piece. He produced my clean medical evaluations, witness statements from neighbors and store clerks, and most damning, Jennifer's own recorded words. This wasn't caregiving, the attorney argued. This was elder abuse. The judge agreed. Jennifer was denied spousal support, received only the belongings she'd brought into the marriage, and was ordered to pay half of David's legal fees. A restraining order followed, keeping her 300 feet from me in the house. When the gavel fell, Jennifer's shoulders crumpled. For the first time, she looked small. Outside the courthouse, David asked, "How do you feel?" My answer was simple. Free. Over the months that followed, we repainted walls, planted roses, and reclaimed rooms once heavy with her presence. David transferred closer to Georgia, close enough to visit but far enough for us both to breathe. I took part-time work at a nonprofit, my independence piecing itself back together. And as I watched the roses bloom in our garden, I realized Jennifer had given me an unintended gift. She had tried to make me doubt myself, erase my judgment, turn me into a ghost in my own home. Instead, she had sharpened me. I had survived her storm and walked out stronger. A year after the divorce decree, life had steadied into something that felt both peaceful and earned. The house, once a battlefield, now smelled of fresh paint and roses instead of tension. David and I rebuilt it piece by piece, turning rooms Jennifer had claimed into spaces of comfort. The basement, once my exile, became a cozy suite for guests and church friends passing through town. I kept working part-time as a bookkeeper for a local nonprofit, and I found purpose in the rhythm of numbers and community again. But shadows from the past sometimes reappeared, reminding me how close I'd come to losing everything. One summer afternoon at 3:00 p.m., while pruning the rose bushes out front, I noticed a car driving slowly by. Jennifer was behind the wheel, her face thinner, drawn tight as if life had started pressing back against her. She didn't stop, just let her eyes linger on the home she had once tried to claim. I felt no triumph, only a sharp clarity. This was my house, my garden, my peace. She had lost it not because of me, but because of her own choices. I bent back to my roses, letting the thorns prick my gloves as if to remind me of resilience. Months later, word reached me that Jennifer had remarried quickly to a retired businessman in Florida she'd met online. Friends speculated on her motives. I kept my thoughts quiet. People like her rarely change. They simply find new stages, new audiences, new targets. I only hoped the man she married had stronger defenses than I once did. But it wasn't my concern anymore. For the first time in years, my days belonged wholly to me. 2 years after her final exit, I spotted her again by accident at a senior center event where I was volunteering. She looked older, brittle, carrying the tension of someone constantly on guard. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw her hesitate. She could walk away. Instead, she approached, voice careful, as if my name might sting her tongue. "Margaret." I nodded. "Hello, Jennifer. You look well?" The surprise flickered across her face. "I am well, thank you." She glanced around, lowered her voice. "Look, I know things got complicated between us back then. I was under tremendous stress. People say things they don't mean when they're overwhelmed." She was still rewriting history, still smoothing 6 months of calculated cruelty into a moment of bad judgment. I studied her for a long beat. My heart no longer raced in her presence. The fear she once cultivated had dissolved. "Jennifer," I said finally, "I hope you found happiness in your life." That was all I was willing to give her. No forgiveness, no shared blame, no agreement to forget. Her expression faltered disappointment, maybe even a trace of anger that her story hadn't been accepted. But some stories should never be rewritten. I walked away without looking back, the way I had on the day she left my house. Later that evening, when David called, he asked, "How did it feel seeing her again?" My answer was simple, anticlimactic. She seemed smaller, less threatening. He chuckled. "That's because she has no power over you anymore. She probably expected you to still be afraid, or angry, or something she could twist." He was right. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't even angry. What I carried now wasn't bitterness, but confidence, the kind forged when you survive someone else's attempt to dismantle your mind and come out clearer, sharper. In time, I began leading a support group at the senior center for others who had faced abuse from family or caregivers. My story became more than survival. It became a tool. I told them the truth Jennifer had taught me: if someone makes you feel confused about your own reality, that isn't an accident, that is a strategy. I reminded them they weren't imagining things. They weren't losing their minds, they were being manipulated, and they deserved dignity and respect. Week after week, I watched that spark return to their eyes, the same spark I had reclaimed when David finally came home and believed me. Survival, I realized, isn't just about enduring. It's about turning pain into strength for yourself and for others. Years earlier, I had sat in a church guest house at 11:00 p.m., terrified and uncertain, convinced I was cornered. Now, standing at the front of my own home in the golden light of evening, roses blooming at my feet, I understood the real victory. Jennifer had tried to reduce me to a dependent shadow, but instead, she showed me how resilient I truly was. She lost everything she schemed to gain. I found everything I thought I'd lost: my home, my peace, and my sense of self. And sometimes, that is all the justice the world requires. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true life stories. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? Your voice matters.